For years, he lived among them. He worked. He smiled. He blended in. And no one suspected the nightmare hiding behind an ordinary face. The story you are about to hear is not a work of fiction. There are no monsters, no ghosts, no supernatural forces. There is only a man and the chilling truth of what can hide behind the most ordinary of smiles. This is a story about the darkness that can take root in our own backyards, unnoticed, until it's far too late. The year is 1978. The city of Chicago is bustling, alive with the sounds of a million different lives intersecting every single day. Amidst this sprawling urban landscape, a man named John Wayne Gacy was a pillar of his community. He was a successful contractor, a Democratic precinct captain who rubbed shoulders with local politicians. He was even known for entertaining children at local parties and charity events, dressed as Pogo the Clown, a character he created himself. He was married, he ran a business, and from the outside, his life looked like a perfect example of the American dream. Neighbors described him as friendly, if a little outspoken. He was just a guy, an average, unremarkable person you might pass on the street without a second thought. But beneath this carefully constructed mask of normalcy, a terrifying secret was festering. While he was shaking hands, organizing block parties, and making children laugh, something far more sinister was happening behind the closed doors of his quiet suburban home on Somerdale Avenue. The late 1970s in Chicago were a time of change and uncertainty. It wasn't uncommon for young men and teenagers, often runaways or those living on the fringes of society, to drift from place to place. So when they started to disappear, nobody raised an alarm, not at first. There were just names on a list, files in a cabinet, young men who, according to official records, had simply moved on. The first one vanished in 1972. Then another in 1975. By 1976, the disappearances were becoming more frequent, one by one. A steady, silent drain of young lives from the city's streets. Police departments were overwhelmed, and the cases were often handled by different jurisdictions that failed to communicate. There was no central database, no task force dedicated to connecting these seemingly random events. They were seen as isolated incidents. A teenager runs away from home. A young man leaves town for a new job. Plausible explanations were always available, and it was easier to accept them than to consider a more horrifying alternative. Warnings were ignored. A young man who had a harrowing encounter with Gacy went to the police, but his story was dismissed. Gacy's political connections and his standing in the community provided him with a shield of credibility that seemed impenetrable. He was a respectable businessman, not a predator. The system that was meant to protect them failed them. Time kept ticking, and while the city slept, the list of the missing grew longer. People disappeared, one by one, and somehow no one connected the dots. The clues were there, scattered like breadcrumbs, but no one was looking for the trail. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place on December 11th, 1978. A 15-year-old boy named Robert Piest, a hard-working kid from a local pharmacy, was last seen talking to a contractor about a potential job. That contractor was John Wayne Gacy. Piest was different from many of the other victims. He had a stable home, a loving family, and was not a runaway. His disappearance immediately triggered a major police investigation. For the first time, all eyes were on Gacy. The shield of normalcy he had so carefully maintained for years finally began to crack. Investigators placed him under surveillance. During one 24-hour watch, they observed him driving erratically, seemingly trying to dispose of something. They grew increasingly suspicious. They obtained a warrant to search his home at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue. When they first entered, it looked like any other house. A bit cluttered, perhaps, with an odd, musty smell lingering in the air. But as they began to look closer, a sense of dread filled the room. A detective noticed a piece of jewelry belonging to one of the missing boys. Another found a receipt from the pharmacy where Robert Piest worked. The pieces were finally clicking into place, forming a picture of unimaginable horror. When investigators finally stepped inside, they realized the truth was far worse than anyone imagined. The strange smell was strongest in the crawl space. It was the undeniable smell of decay. As they dug into the dirt floor beneath the house, their worst fears were confirmed. The house on Somerdale Avenue was not a home, it was a tomb. The arrest of John Wayne Gacy sent a shockwave of terror across the nation. The friendly neighborhood clown, the successful businessman, was unmasked as one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. As investigators continued their grim work, they uncovered the remains of 29 victims buried in the crawl space and other locations on his property. 4 more were recovered from the nearby Des Plaines River. The trial was a media spectacle. Gacy's defense team argued for insanity, claiming he had a split personality. But the prosecution painted a picture of a cunning, manipulative predator who knew exactly what he was doing. In March 1980, the jury found him guilty of 33 murders. He was sentenced to death. For the families of the victims, the verdict brought a sense of justice, but it could never erase the pain of their loss. Many of the young men he murdered remained unidentified for decades, their names lost to history until modern forensic science finally gave them back their identities. The most terrifying part wasn't what he did, it was how long he was invisible. While everyone was looking right at him. This story serves as a chilling reminder that evil doesn't always wear a monstrous face. Sometimes it wears the mask of a neighbor, a friend, a clown. And it thrives in the silence of a community that doesn't want to see what's right in front of them. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as chilling as we did, subscribe for more dives into the darkness that lurks just beneath the surface of our world.